Now, my dear friends, having looked a little bit at what Lent is and looked at what some of these practices of Lent are, like the ashes, we now want to turn our attention more deeply to our main theme, and that is embracing Lent with a childlike heart, in line with our theme, our Archdiocesan theme for the entire year. Now, why should we be speaking about a childlike heart? We remember Jesus' teaching. For instance, in Matthew chapter 8, reading from verse 3, he says, "Truly I say to you, unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." And again, if you read from Luke chapter 18, reading from verse 16, he says, "Let the children come to me and do not hinder them, for to such belongs the kingdom of God." So it seems as if Jesus puts childlikeness as a criterion without which we cannot enter into the kingdom of heaven. It's so vital. It is so important. In the gospel according to Matthew, it says it. In the gospel according to Luke, it repeats it. And therefore, if in Lent we desire to enter into the kingdom of God, it is necessary that we be childlike, that we have the spirit of a child. Now, let's begin by saying what childlikeness is not. What is it not? Well, childlikeness is not childishness. No. It's different. Childlikeness is not childishness. And in fact, if you read from 1 Corinthians chapter 14, reading from verse 20, Paul will say, "Do not be like children in your thinking. Be infants in evil, but in thinking be mature." So childlikeness is not behaving, in a childish way, having a childlike thinking. No. Paul says that we should only be children as regards evil. That is, we are not experts in doing evil. No, that's the only thing that he says. But he says that we should be mature in our thinking. So childlikeness is not childishness. Again, if you read from the letter to the Ephesians chapter 4, reading from verse 14, he said, "We must no longer be children tossed to and fro and blown about by every wind or doctrine, by people's trickery, by their craftiness in deceitful scheming." So childlikeness is not being childish so that we can easily be led astray by anybody at all. No, that is not it. So what then are the true qualities of being childlike? What does the Bible say about that? Now let's then ask ourselves, so who then is a child of God? Who then is a child of God? Now, if you read from the letter to the Romans, I'm reading from Romans chapter 8, reading from verses 14 to 17, Paul will explain quite deeply what it means that somebody is a child of God. This is the distinction between being childish and being childlike. Paul says from Romans chapter 8, 14 to 17, he says, "For all who are led by the Spirit of God are sons of God," or if you like, are children of God. So being led by the Spirit is what makes us children or sons and daughters of God. "For you did not receive the spirit of slavery to fall back into fear, but you have received the spirit of sonship and daughtership. When we cry, 'Abba, Father,' it is the Spirit himself bearing witnesses with our spirit that we are children of God. And if children, then heirs, heirs of God and fellow heirs with Christ, provided we suffer with him in order that we may also be glorified with him." This is Romans chapter 8, 14 to 17. Beautiful words of St. Paul. He defines for us what it is to be a child of God. He says you have to be someone led by the Spirit. Now, in this particular passage, which I recommend to you for your careful study, Romans chapter 8, 14 to 17, in which Paul is teaching us what it means to be a child of God, I want to underline 3 words in that text. First and foremost, he speaks about the spirit of slavery. That's number 1. Number 2, he speaks about sonship, and he talks about Abba, the son who cries, or the child who cries out, Abba, Father, the child of God. And then thirdly, he speaks about being heirs with Christ. 3 things: a slave, a child, an heir. 3 things that Paul speaks about in this passage. Now, what does it mean? Now, in any ancient Greco-Roman family, any Hellenistic family, any family at the time of Jesus Christ or at the time of Paul, there would have been 3 groups of people in that family. Apart from the father and the mother, there would have been a slave in the family, and there would also have been a child in the family. So there would be the parents, there would be a slave, and there would be a child. Generally, in almost any family.